Hello, and welcome to this read aloud of the dragon scene, line 2200 to 2536 of Maria Headley's Beowulf. I am here with my friend. This is Camille, the literary cat, who always is sitting with me. She has no idea why I did that just now. This is just a great scene. Hope you enjoy it. And again, listen to the preview video first if you want a little support and background, but we're on page 95 of the Headley translation, line 2220. 2200, I should say. Later days were cloudier. A war began. Hygelac was dead by then, his shield yielding no safety for his son, Heardred, against the war-wired Scilfings, who patrolled, hunting for the young Geats' king. They found him, surrounded by his soldiers, slew them, and after that, boys, well, you know. The rings rolled down to Beowulf. He caught the kingdom he'd rejected and held tight to it for 50 winters, before he, too, found himself an old man, the gray guardian of Geatland. Across a star-studded sky, in deepest dark one night, a dragon ranged, unchecked. She was a scar-skinned warrior, long accustomed to shadow soaring by moonlight, defending her claim, hoarding in her own high hall. No man knew the way into the dragon's cliff-top cocoon, but a thief stumbled through a split in the stone and retrieved a gem-glistering goblet. He robbed her of nothing else, just the cup, but up she rose, raging, grieving, though to cry out was to confess she'd been stripped while sleeping. This country, these creatures, would feel her fire. The instigator hadn't intended to ignite Armageddon. He'd merely slunk into a cave and found a crypt. The slave, seeking safety from a miserly master, became the spark that smoked a primeval monarch out. He spelunked into yawning dark and gripped a wall. Instead of clammy stone, he felt a kiln. Instead of granite, gold. Whose forbidden hold was this? What had he provoked? He wrapped trembling fingers around the first small shining thing he found and fled. For the vault was more than a treasury. Piles of preciousness nested beneath the coils of a snoring serpent. It was a bed. Bro, no one living knows the name of the lost soul who'd interred those spoils long ago, burying the grave goods of a wealthy race. Death had snatched them all into a sack and lifted them out of existence, leaving only one, the ghost custodian, mourning over friends, family, foes alike. He had no future for himself in mind, nothing but a dead end, left with only this haul of tomb treasure, nothing to spend it on, no joys left to consume. He attempted to wring pleasure from his stint as the richest man alive. There was a barrow already built, high on a headland above the sand, secured by waves against trespass. The last man climbed the slope, carrying his collection, all the things worth saving, all the wonders he could find. He organized the bounty, performing final rites. Hold these, Mother Earth. Men have lost their grip. We mined this metal from you, forged it for fighting, ruined ourselves warring against one another. Man by man, we gave our souls over to spite, lives flashing before our eyes. Farewells to all our hopes. I'm alone here now. No sword bearer, no Cupkeeper, no hall sweeper, my flock's flown south without me. This hard helmet will lose its filigree. There's no polisher waiting to keep our battle masks gleaming. Everyone once waking now dreams. This breastplate endured many battles, bruised by blades, smashed by shields. Now it'll be red dust along with its owner. Metal shells rest here without their warriors. Now there are no heroes, no soothing music, no harp, no hawk soaring through hall, no swift horses trampling green grass. We existed, now we are extinct. And so the last survivor mourned, making his way from emptiness to emptiness, listing his sins one by one, wandering the world woefully until death came welling in to wash him from the rocks. Afterward, an ancient collector soaring through the starry hours happened past and saw a golden glyph from above. A flame-tongued one who sought out strongholds as she scourged a slip-skinned dragon, tagging the sky with flaming sigils. Farmers kept vigil, dreading her smoky signs. She was hungry for hordes, tempted by temples, and every burial site was known by her to hold heathen hopes, howling for a new owner. There she dwelt, this nameless fear, for 300 years, padlocking her hall with all her limbs until the infiltrator infuriated her. That slave skittered to the owner's home with the golden goblet and gifted it to get mercy. Thus, the hold of the old gold get was known. Her vault catalogued, her ring hoard rung, for the master clocked what he was looking at, a treasure protected by time. At once the dragon woke, choking on fury. She huffed her hoard, winding herself around it, revulsion kindling within her, the sour scent of an enemy man, the footprints of a plunderer who'd blundered past her sleeping skull and seen her secret dreaming place. We all know stories like this one. A man, unmarked by fate, may sometimes cloak himself in God's grace, passing close to monsters, unbeheld. The hoard holder fine-toothed the ground, fire foraging for the man who'd invaded her bedchamber. Wide she circled, planning his disemboweling, claw mapping every inch of wilderness, though no man there to capture. She imagined a wild battle, flexed rapturously, then undulated into her lair to hunt again for the missing cup, only to rediscover the telltale evidence. Someone had desecrated her delights. Teeth gritted, she ticked until nightfall, that guardian of old gold and haunted history, her urge toward murder more intense by the moment. Eventually, ecstatic, she outlasted the light. Into darkness she emerged and put the world on blast. Roaring into the sky, a comet of catastrophe. Villagers in the vicinity felt her attack first, their lands blackened, but soon it would be their lord and treasure giver suffering. The dragon swooped low and spat flame, destroying both manor and hovel, scrawling red RSVPs in the sky. The winged ringer had no time for survivors. She skywrote her grievances, then rewrote them roughly in land fire from end to end of Geet realm, her scaly helm shining as she sang insults from the clouds. Back to her ridge she whipped as the sun showed itself, slithering into her gold stalk, locking herself away. She'd exhaled upon their ground, and now they burned black blood. Bah! She slept, trusting in human frailty to keep her lair unmolested. That trust would turn to dust like everything. Soon, Beowulf received a blistering missive. His own hall, his heart home, had combusted. He'd been ghost thrown by the skyborn gold holder. To the good man, this region's ring-giver, this was distress unbearable, punishment perhaps for the Lord. Unjust? He weighed it. Had he broken old covenants, unwarded his soul? Doubt dawned as he considered deeds long done, sins kept secret. He wasn't used to feeling insecure. Meanwhile, the fire drake raked coast to coast with claws, charred gilded Geatland without pause, crimson blazes and black billows, until the old war king woke to action, plotting vengeance on the stranger. The foremost warrior projected for his own protection a myth-worthy shield made entirely of iron. He knew no forest gift could defend him. His safety lay in smithy. Linden couldn't withstand lightning. Though Beowulf didn't predict he'd die in this fight, he and the dragon both, he'd always known that fate could fuck a fighter up, no matter the hoards he held, no matter the luck he had had. The ring collector was too proud to bring a warband, to march an army against the firmament flyer. His plan would be his pyre. He imagined the dragon a dimwit, clocking neither her courage nor her grit. I mean, he had for years been up in it, persevering through pain and danger, countless grim battles since he'd saved Hrothgar and Heorot, since he'd rushed Grendel and all his kin, knocking that damn family to the mat. One of the worst of those hand-to-hand hells had been the one when Hygelac, Geat King, closest comrade, perished in Friesland. His skin became sheath for a sword, his skull a cup overflowing with blood. Beowulf saved himself only by swimming, fleeing the massacre by sea, bearing back as he swam 30 suits of armor torn from corpses he'd created. The Hetwari had no joy of him, hiding their heads beneath their own splintering linden as Beowulf ground them into cold sand. Few saw home again. Solitary, salt-scourged, he swam, screaming over open ocean. Ecgtheow's son, repatriating grief-stricken to his homeland, Hygd tried to quicken him with the throne, offering him gold, gemstones, a potent position, a life less lonely. Her own son she didn't trust to govern, to keep borders, trust against deploying hordes. Now his daddy was dead. She couldn't convince Beowulf to step over Herodred, nor consent to come to her bed, but instead, he offered his counsel to the boy king, until he was man enough to rule the Wettergeats himself. Soon thereafter, exiles appeared over the salt highway, Othair's sons, who raised a cup against their old wave king, Onela. He was the ruler of the Schilfings, had given gold from his kingdom seat, was master of their mead hall. Heedless, Hedred received the refugees and traded his life for it, his reception repaid in regrets. The fatal flash of Onela's sword and Hygelac's line was ended. The Swede king, satisfied, set off to the briny boulevard, and Beowulf, bereaved, ascended the Geat throne in grief, never surrendering his reluctance to become the ruler. That was a good king. In later days, our man paid the killers in kills, avenging his dead prince by befriending Eadgils, the last of the Swedish rebel sons. Beowulf sent him an army of sea-born swords and tied a scarlet ribbon around the blood feud, exterminating Onela. And so, Ecgtheow's heir, Beowulf, inherited a complement of king's qualifiers: dangers rare, treasures tragic, constant proofs of courage, excelling at every impossibility until the day came for him to kill the dragon. The Geat king rode with 11 companions, firing himself into fury as he hunted the lair's location. By then he'd found the smoking gun, the embezzlement that stoked the dragon's rage. The gilt cup had been brought to him by the burglar who'd begun this, and that thief, on life tilt, became the 13th man, rife with regrets, compelled to guide an exposition back to the scene of his crime. The unwilling guest of the king led the rest, in safety of daylight, to the hide he'd strayed to, a golden grave near salt shoals and trembling tides. Piled inside like scales were mounds of etched metal, detailed by the dead, along with a veteran guardian who now never slept. She was the sole barrier to entry. But burrowed beneath the earth as she was, there was no simple way to bring death to her den. The old king fell to his knees on the cliff point and willed good fortune upon the Geats he'd ruled, those who'd sat fireside, warmed by his gold. Stricken, suddenly unsteady, Beowulf foresaw his fate in the fog, shrouded but certain. For a moment he felt for his old foes, fen-bound, embarking alone. Soon, his own lease would expire, evicting him from hall, hearth, and home. Beowulf, Ecgtheow's own son, manned up, mastered himself, and set it straight. I lived whole lives in my youth, endless combat, great wars. I remember every moment, even now. When I was 7, my father sent me out to sleep in the king's house. He dropped me on a new daddy, King Hrethel, who kept me safe, opened his hands, treated me, a fosterling, like his own sons. Never was I less dear to him than Herebeald or Halfdan, or even my best beloved Hygelac, the eldest. Herebeald tumbled into an early grave, done in by his brother. Halfdan tugged his bone bow, flinging a missile that missed the mark, shark-toothed his sibling's heart, a bloody thorn. There was no way to mourn for him, no vengeance to be had for what could mitigate the blame. Who was left to shame for this heart-thieving? Nobody. It's the same sort of sorrow when a man outlives his son, sees him climb the gallows and swing, sentenced justly for crimes against the king. The father hollows out a sob to rapturing ravens, witnesses his boys swallowing dust, unable to plead his case. No settlement in silver can buy a child back from the gods of air. The father awakens, disgraced, in despair thereafter, knowing his inheritor's been erased. He has no verve, no urge to visit beds, no wish to father a new son, now his firstborn's dead. He stares in sorrow at his child's empty room. Hears the dreary wind that habits there now. His hall is silent, cheerless, hungry, hearth without coals, riders sagging in their saddles, heroes hidden, where once singers sang and harps were fingered, where a yard full of sons were brothers. Abandoned on earth, left to live alone with only sins to number, the gray king retreats to slumber, moaning dirges. What son? What wife? What life? What song? This was Hrethel, after Herebeald was dead. He couldn't bait the killer with blood-feud rules, nor hate him for his wrongs. Murderer was not his preferred son, but still he was next to the new blot-blurred line. Hrethel walked away from the world, losing the plot, heart tortured, stone-faced. He marched alone into the flickering light of God, leaving what he had done to leave, bones, strongholds, and cold sod to his sons, as a rich man must. That old man was dust, but his old wars remained. Swedes and Geats got in each other's faces and fought ferociously. Hrethel, dead, dark desires rising, Ongentheow's sons banded together, full of war wrath. On and on they came, keeping no peace from overseas, but twisting knives and words into ambush at the hill of Hreosas. My own killer king can avenge that. Sing it with me. You all know the story, but there was a cost. We lost Hathsin, Geat Lord, in that bloodbath, and Hijlak, my own Hijlak, drew his sword the next morning. He brought it down on Ongentheow, his brother's slayer, splitting his helmet, sending the old Swede to his death, drained the dirt, drinking his blood. Even his leathern fists, feud fortified, failed in fending off his fate. And me. I fought to repay the rings Hijlak gave me, sword swift, debts edited in red. He gave me greensward, rolling hills, a home of my own. He had no need to seek any superhero among the Giftas, Swedes, or Speardanes. No hired men to secure his six. I was always there, his consistent companion, marching ahead, first to charge. I was the soldier who kept my king shredding, the warrior who kept his queen wed. I was his man. Until, well, I'm not dead yet. I'll lead while taking my last breath as long as this sword stands by, even if I have to end with death. It's been my second in every battle since the very beginning, when I slew Dyfrin, the Hujas warrior, in a duel before both our armies. He brought no horde back to his ring lord, that flag waver, but instead fell bravely, not to my blade, but to my boldness. I wrung that man to death, my fists deep in his rib cage, my hands in his lungs, his bone vault broken. Now, I'll use all I have, sword, fists, sharpened edge, honed heart, to engage the snake for this gold heap. And Beowulf blasted his last boast. I laid my life down on the daily when I was your age. Now, gray guardian though I am, I'll show you how it's done. I'll kill this creature if it's the last thing I do. If it's no coward, it'll come out of its cave and face its challenger. And he eyeballed one of his men, power, privileged warriors. Eyeballed each of his men, power, privileged warriors, for the last time. I'd go in without weapons, as I always have, if this weren't a dragon. I'd do it like a man, kill it bare-handed, like I killed Grendel so long ago. But mortal skin can't contend with the flame-spitting fiend, and so I go in sword-armed, taking shield and mail shirt. I won't surrender when I see the beast, but fight it by the wall, and God will dictate which brawler wins. Get a good seat, boys, and look to the sky. Your job is to watch this flyer fall. I'm decided. Don't defy me. I've no more shade to throw on this serpent raider. Let the winner win. Let the loser get bent. My men, stay here atop the barrow. Wait with your war weapons. Watch and see who wins. Who can suffer more? Who can be worse wounded? Who can survive fire? This is my fight. I don't ask for intervention. None of you are strong enough to take this thing, to try to stake your manhood on doing a dragon. I'll be the one winning the gold, my bravery the broadest. And if not, boys, this will be the battle that breaks your king.